In this video, I'm going to go through every single difference I noticed in the first episode of One Punch Man Season 3 compared to its manga. I played it in 0.5 times speed, so I noticed a lot. If I missed anything and you saw it, leave it in the comments below, because I plan on doing this for every single episode in the season. You could use a few scouts, so leave what I missed in the comments below, and maybe I'll shoot you a message on Discord and see if we can make this some form of group project. The opening shot is basically one-to-one. Even the text from the manga is directly the exact same as the text is saying in the anime. And until we get to this shot here, this shot is actually more zoomed out in the manga, and this is the same for the next shot with Sitch while they're discussing Garou. While Sitch is talking about the final fight of the second season, there isn't actually an overlay of season 2 playing. It's usually just a overlay of Silver Fang. This shot here, also more zoomed out in the manga, showing the other executives' reaction to the Stitch's words. Another example of a shot being more zoomed in. Here they skip a panel of him walking over to the execs in anger and then cut straight to his rage out that he has before. This is an example of where they give us more detail. And Super Alloy Darkshine's design is slightly different in this adaptation, mainly because if you know, you know. This guy, he's not actually black. Yeah. They also skip another panel here in order just to jump straight to the more interesting shot, which is Child Emperor working on trying to find the location of the Monster Association. It was this shot that I really started to notice the sound design. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's so grounded to hear Child Emperor's sticks make this like mechanical noise, which usually would be overlooked in an anime like this, to be honest. Murata's horny ass design is left only for a few seconds on this shot. A lot of manga fans will be disappointed about to a degree, but also I'm very much happy leaving the horny ass fan service in the manga. If you want to see it, it's crazy there, but yeah, go have a look at it. Detail of Drive Knight's hologram is also vastly different for good reason, trying to get a very much non-animation friendly design to move as a hologram just for use in a single shot. It's just not something feasible for an animation studio, but they, 100% fulfill the exact same needs. The information is that Drive Knight is rushing through ahead of ahead of everyone else, so it's very clear that that's what's happening here. My only note is that his shoulder pads are a different design than they are in the manga. Another thing I'll just say, I mentioned fan service is a big thing that they're skimping down on, but come on, man. We have got enough female fan service. Let Super Ally Darkshine have like the tidy whiteys. Like they made him a lot smaller. Also, Tatsumaki is a lot bigger in comparison to the two characters here. Whether that's just because of perspective adjustments is unclear, but it's just something I noticed. This is another example of a change. They switched around some of the scenes. So usually after these three S-Class heroes are given the information that the raid is going to happen in 3 days, usually we cut to another one of the S-Class heroes, Zombie Man, him approaching one of his targets, and then we cut to Atomic Samurai and his apprentices. So they move this around. This scene happens later, and we move straight to Atomic Samurai. Something that I can really appreciate, by the way, is creatively remaking one of Murata's panels that is a vertical panel. A panel where it lends the fact that the page can look down far longer than a screen on anime would. And a screen on anime needs to make use of all the space in frame, while the manga can reshape the panel to display whatever information in whatever way they want. They creatively remade this in the anime by having this massive panning shot as it goes past each apprentice until it gets to Atomic Samurai. A really creative change to keep the source material as accurate as possible. It switched around where this line happens, the I'm stronger than you, mainly just for dramatic effect, because if he's saying it in the same frame as seeing this shot, the reaction doesn't hit as hard. Now the next panel is something that's genuinely really hard to adapt once again, because Murata gets really creative with how he does his spreads, and one of these examples is doing a full page drawing of Puri-Puri Prisoner while he's walking out of prison cell, but only the top half of his torso is actually within canon inside the frame. So you're left with this situation where you just have to do a panning shot. There's not really any other way around it. But I will say, this is when the OST starts to kick in. See, we've been hearing dramatic music to, emphasize what we've been listening to, all this exposition. But here's the first time where we get an OST that suits the character and just helps him come across all the more himself. And this is how they make up, by the way, for the fact that they couldn't do this full panning shot and showing his crotch. They do back shots between his legs. It's so good. My only complaint here is that this prisoner doesn't run to give him the sweater. That's the only thing I wanted from this scene that they didn't add. But it's honestly such a minute detail. It's just something I would have liked to seeing the energy he gave to get there, and you know, the next panel of him being so like out of breath because he's probably been running from like the other side of the prison just to give a sweater. But you know, then we also get this panel of him taking it from him, and it's like this absolutely princess magic filter, and the OST that plays is so good. It is so high gay energy, and it just cuts to Child Emperor going. It's so good. As we cut the Child Emperor, we actually miss a shot of him typing. We hear it, but we don't see it. So they've very clearly kept in mind that they're skipping that, but still acknowledge that that action is still happening. They leave out the detail that, you know, Child Emperor is calling Metal Knight when he is clearly eating breakfast, and Child Emperor, being a kid, has to correct him and say like, well, it's not breakfast because it's past noon. It's just one little tiny detail that does kind of display their relationship within, you know, the next few panels. The anime added this animation of Child Emperor biting to emphasize the point he's making, which is pretty cool. They really show that their compositing and lighting is so much better this season. Imagine what these middle parts would have looked like in season 2. Just think about it. Just think about how horrible they'd look. And now, they look beautiful. They look so much better. Animation of blood isn't actually in the manga at all. It's just a blank, stunned silence. In that shot there, Metal Knight is actually more zoomed in the manga, not the anime. The anime zoomed out to grant more detail. The screen doesn't just zip no signal. It does this like old school turn off animation where it goes instead. Also, for this entire scene, Child Emperor doesn't have this ID badge on it in the manga. So halfway through the episode of the manga, we actually zoom past Saitama's entire scene and jump straight to the end of the chapter, where we're revealed that the Hero Association is sending off the Norwiki private force, which consists of elite soldiers in super high-tech battle armor that get sent straight to save the executive's son, who's been kidnapped by the Monster Association. This is where we get our zombie man scene at the halfway mark of the episode. And might I say, his theme is also completely fire. It matches the character so much and lends this scene the creepiness that it's trying to deliver. So they actually add a good bit to Blizzard's thoughts here. Like, she's thinking what she's gonna do and she gets up to Saitama's apartment, but they're cutting constantly to other things. They cut first to the apartment itself and how it looks and how we can see it's run down and kind of a shithole. Then we cut to a graphic of what happened to the Blizzard group, which he mentions something happens to them. By the way, Tony's Gate fucking dirt sound effects hits when they show that tornado absolutely eviscerated the Blizzard group for no reason. Hilarious, by the way. Now, there's a few things in this scene that I would like to mention that changed, because there's actually a lot, but I'm only going to mention the things that I personally low-key missed. So in this shot here, you can see that nobody is looking at Blizzard as she enters, which is not the case in the manga. Everyone is looking at her apart from Saitama and King, who are entrenched in their game for good reason, because when you cut to King and Saitama when they're talking, you can see in King's Game Boy that he's absolutely shitting on Saitama. And that's why Saitama looks so desperately stressed here, and it helps convey that fact with the added information. Obviously, it's clear that Saitama is losing the game, but it's not clear that King is the one delivering that fucking whoop ass to him. This shot here is a perfect example of a really, really well adapted scene into anime. Now, I know what you're saying. There's a lot of detail lost within these two examples here. But the thing is, detail is always going to be lost in anime. You're trading it for another kind of detail. See, where manga can be so precise in every single stroke of the pen, anime can't. It simply can't. Because you're not just drawing one image. You're drawing hundreds upon thousands of images in the anime. So, yes, there's going to be lack in detail, but you replace that detail with color grading and lighting and the animation itself. So yes, you're kind of missing some detail here with his arm and the detail in his face and his shoulders. But apart from that, like, it very, very easily, you can tell it's the exact same scene. And this detail, like the detail at present here, is much higher than you would see from most other anime. Another detail is that Fang is getting the needle actually put into his back as she enters, and that isn't shown here. The acupuncture is already in his back, so it's probably some needless information that they cut back on for animation budget reasons. They adapted this panel as best they could. People are going to complain about the fact that this is just a fucking panning shot that goes on for way too long, which 100% it does. But the thing is, it does for a reason. Look at this panel. It's just all text and a single image. And what they did was amazing. They're really taking notes from Danadan and using like really creative uses of color to emphasize emotional moments like this, where she's so completely overwhelmed with the situation she's been placed in. And then you see this shot and it's like, bang, okay, 1-to-1, fucking perfect replication of what we want to see from a scene like this. Blizzard freaking out over them not really taking the levity of the situation, and Saitama's deadpan, bitch what you doing here reaction. And here, I'm not sure if we're getting Silverfang fucking ass or Silverfang calf or whatever this part of him is, but it's actually supposed to be Silverfang's head covering his knee, or the lower half of his body. Here, Saitama just nods instead of actually telling Genos to tell her. They add scenes here and give more dialogue to Bang and Fang here, by the way. Now, although I really appreciate this visual here, and you know how it's just the exact same thing as in the manga, that's not really what we want. We wanted a version of this that, you know, fits in anime. This is literally just like a box. Have a little detail with the background in the room that you probably already have a render of, and just kind of gray it out, making the area feel so dead, and him being the only thing that's like emphasized, you know what I mean? This is a reused shot from the previous location because the angle is probably close enough to what they needed from the manga example, so they reused it to save time. But I do think that it would have been worth keeping, because also Saitama's expression in this is very different from the manga. See here, he's kind of like, this could be portrayed as like he's actually listening, but in the other one, he is just so fucking fed up and pissed off. This is the animation that they used in the trailer, and they repeated over and over and over again, which made people think that this scene was going to last way too long. But in the final version, it lasts all of 2 seconds, which is just such a godsend, and I'm really happy about. This scene felt like it was going to take 10 years to play out, but they just fucking smashed through it so goddamn fast. So more or less, chapter 86 of One Punch Man was adapted insanely faithfully when it came to everything. The only thing I can really complain about is like the compositioning of where like certain characters were laid out, and minor details in maybe 2 or 3 of the scenes. This chapter's adaptation a score of 8 out of 10, mainly because some of the character designs were obviously the anime's version of those character designs, meaning that there was minute differences, and that's going to be through the entire anime. So on to the next chapter. That shot, Garou's ab pan shot, is 1-to-1 Murata's work. It is like, even in terms of like small details, it's so goddamn accurate. Some of the pecs are rounder than Murata's work, but that's a stylistic difference. Everything else is almost perfectly the same. And Garou waking up and the close-up on his face only grants us more detail. And although the angle isn't as dynamic for when he wakes up, everything's in the right place. All the bandages are in the right place. Even down to the damage to the bed is all more or less the exact same. Instead of Garou just reading the note and all that text being this still of him reading it, they actually cut to a panning shot of the note itself with a close-up and then cut to Garou reading it, making it so it's just not one shot for like 15 seconds straight. That being said, you can really tell that this is one of the scenes that's like planned in 3D and drawn in 2D, because everything is just almost too perfect in how it's laid out. I love the use of color here, although, you know, we can't technically say it's not accurate to the source material. We can say that it adds so much emotion to this scene. Garou putting the shirt on is more or less the same, and him kicking the door is slightly different because the jail cell isn't as big, which, I'm not gonna lie, doesn't really change much in the Lawrence screen theme, especially because I've read the manga. I know what happens throughout this entire arc, and I know that this doorway has no effect on what happens later. So although not 100% accurate, it really doesn't matter. So something I noticed is in this walking scene, the manga has him leaning up against the wall because he's still feeling so sore and weak from the battle beforehand. So he's leaning on the wall for support as he walks up. This isn't present in anime. They switch around the scenes and reuse certain elements. Not reuse, but use different shots that are similar to other shots in order to make the pace of this scene speed up a little, because it's very, just information and text heavy, which is a really good sign. One thing I will say is that the text bubbles in the manga make it really clear that in this moment, Garou is talking to Garou alone and telepathically. That isn't very clear in the anime. They should have added like some weird voice modulation over his texting dialogue here. So people's main issue with this is that they do cut a lot from this chapter. See, when Gyro suggests what they're going to do with these characters, Machine God just says, nah, the battlesuits are pretty good, you should like keep them here because the battlesuits are literally just for those individuals, they're not going to work on the people. So Garou says, oh, we just use them as slaves, that's chill. But in the manga, monsters jump at these like terrified people, and it sets up for someone who we see later. Demon King the Ripper shows up and cuts up 3 monsters that are trying to eat these humans because they're like not waiting for their turn or waiting for Gyro to say it's okay to do so. And then after that point is when she steps in, stopping him from killing them himself, and suggests that he'll take them as slaves. Gyro says that Slasher King needs to give them to Super S, and that Ripper God is the one who notices Garou calling him out and demanding he come out and reveal himself. He doesn't do it himself. Then more or less the scene plays out pretty much exactly as it does in the anime. Apart from the ending, when Gyro is giving the mission to Bug God and Slasher King. And then as a sort of post-credit scene, we get the scene where our ninjas are discussing what they're going to do with Flashy Flash and how they don't trust the Monster Association, along with Speed of Sound Sonic's reintroduction, where he reveals that he feels the effects of the monster cell he ate in season 2, but in reality it actually just gave him diarrhea and he's just a little lighter, and that's why he feels faster. Hey, Editor Josephu here. I swear to fucking God, I did not plan this number, okay? This is how many differences I spotted. Sex number. Oh, that's so fucking cringe. Now, I kind of knew that they were going to cut stuff from the anime, mainly just because of one simple fact, right? It's not because of JC Staff or any crap like that. It's because this arc is quite big. Now, I'm thinking of big arcs in my head. I'm thinking, let's say, Dragon Ball Z and the entirety of the Buu saga, right? Arguably the biggest arc in Dragon Ball. That has 1,300 pages, roughly, and that's rounding up. But if you compare that to the Monster Association, it has 6,700 pages. There's chapters in this arc that are over 100 pages alone, and these first 2 were like 70 pages each. You can understand why they might find a need to skip over some stuff just to get through this within the next 10 years. One Punch Man is a notoriously difficult anime to adapt, and I'm not trying to dunk on other anime here, okay? Like JJK and Dragon Ball, all these like mangakas have so much talent in designing fights and their characters and having expression, but nothing comes close to Murata. It's Berserk and Murata. Like the detail Murata can put to paper is unbelievable and unobtainable in an anime. It just is. And it's such a hard thing to swallow because, God, it's good. So yeah, the Monster Association is roughly 5.5 times bigger than the largest arc in Dragon Ball. And they're trying to get it done in 2 seasons. I personally would much rather split this big chunky boy up into 3 seasons if necessary. Mainly because there is just so much to this, and it genuinely wouldn't suffer because this arc in itself sort of has mini arcs. It has like 3 major stages that it goes through, and you could very easily make a season out of each one of those. But overall, it's actually really, really, loyal to the source material. Sure, it skips some stuff, but what we saw was insanely close to what's in the manga. Now, I know there's no fights so far. We are definitely getting a fight next Sunday. No question, by the way. We are 100% getting a fight next Sunday. And some of the fights that are going to happen later in this season are some peak One Punch Man fights, let me tell you. So I'm really happy with episode 1, surprisingly. The color grading, the character design, the environment layout, the sound design, the OST, it's all really, really good. So if they can get good animation for the fights, nobody is going to notice any of these small details, because we're going to have something monumental on our hands.